I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or 60 gigabytes of video and images. There's no way, and we'd be here all night if we showed you every photo and every bit of video. And some with much more dramatic spiritual impact, I think. So we're just going to open this up. Sonny, if you'll grab that microphone, and I'll share this one down here, and you, Mike, will share that one down there. We're going to just open this up. Any questions at all? It would help to have a little bit of house lights if we can, just a little bit, because it's so bright up here. Thank you. That's perfect. So, questions? And you can ask anyone. Don't ask them all at once. Ed. How about you on that, Sonny?
They have no power tools. Everything they do is by hand.
You got to use that microphone.
They have no power tools. Everything's done by hand with shovels and little hand things. They cut rebar with old doll saws, and no. And we don't let them use any power tools because they don't know how to use them. Yeah, they just destroy them.
So you're asking whether or not we made the bricks? The bricks are locally fired. Yeah, so in the traditional way, so they make a big pit, they mix clay with it, a lot of plant matter, they'll mix it really well, and then they'll cover it with banana leaves, and it'll basically cook for weeks. And then when they think the consistency's right, then they'll pull it out, and they have just wood block forms, just like they would in Egypt, way back in Moses' day. And they hand pat them, and then they deform them, and then lay them out to sun dry. And then they'll stack them in these like pyramids, similar to a pyramid, coat the whole outside with this mixture of sawdust and mud, and they leave a tunnel, 2 tunnels right through the middle, and they'll build a huge fire in there, and it cooks them from the ends out. So their clay bricks are real inconsistently. Some are really hard, some are soft, some are overcooked and brittle, so it's a whole mix.
Not me.
So in one of the pictures, there was a young... Oh, the question is, who designs the building? Who basically engineers and builds it? So they do, literally, it's a hand drawing. So basically the dimensions of the building, where they want doorways, and where they want walls to divide. So that block was 3 classrooms. So they just hand draw it. They submit that hand drawing to the governmental authorities. And when I say governmental, it's the local. It's the LC1, local chair person 1. That person looks at it and says, yeah, we like it. We think that's a good idea. And then the actual construction, in one of those pictures, it was a young man wearing a kind of a red flannel shirt with it partially open with a tape measure, a more modern tape measure. That was Joseph. And Joseph is a mason. So he told us we don't go there and tell them how to do it. They do things way different than we do. And they do what's sustainable within their culture. And so we just say, where do you want us to do and what do you want us to do? And most of the time it's like, pick all that stuff up and carry it where I want it. And so
They have, just to follow up on that, they have one plumb bob on a string, and one short 1-foot level. And those are the only 2 instruments they have to make those walls straight. Yeah.
And string. Yeah. Oh, they're wicked straight.
And then those bricks you were talking about, they're not quite twice the size of a brick in America, but a third larger, and they're very dry.
So the question is how do they get in touch with us? And when you say us, you mean who? You're talking about the missionaries or the people on the ground? Missionaries. Okay. Michael, I'm going to let you field that one. How do they get in touch with the missionaries?
Well, Bill and Danielle are missionaries that were sent out by the church here, and so they are in connection with Kevin on all the details. And Kevin did an amazing job leading our team and planning it out, everything, keeping us focused, keeping us going. So they reached out to Kevin, and Kevin was talking to them about that we have a team coming. What would you like us to do? And they gave us a list of things. Here's what we would like to see happen with this team. And so over the course of several months, Kevin and Pastor Bill over there went back and forth via email, just sharing ideas and getting all the details in place. Of course, that was open to being extremely flexible because things change on the fly over there all the time. So, right. The question was, there's missionaries living there and they're in contact with us. Yeah, there's 4 or 5 on the ground, something like that, that are permanently in Uganda at the mission station, and they run the whole place, the school and the medical center and everything else. There's so much that goes on there. They take care of the day-to-day operation.
I know. So the question is, in the video of the tree that was shown, that's called a nortulu. No one knows what that word means. Literally no one. Even one of the oldest gentlemen in the village, who is about 104, doesn't know what that name means. This tree is super ancient. It's been around forever. And it was the center for demonic witchcraft worship. So when they would say sacrifices, they mean that quite literally. Animal sacrifices were brought there, and then oftentimes along with food offerings, alcohol offerings, anything to appease the spirits, to gain favor, to bless a marriage, to bring healing, any number of things. Anyone else want to comment on the tree? You're going to have to talk eventually.
Tell us about that, what we saw Bill talking in the video at the tree.
All right, Mike.
I was way in the back. I don't think I can tell. My understanding was I was actually a year from the time, I think Bill purchased the tree.
Nope, he didn't purchase
He didn't purchase, he just cut it down.
Yeah.
Okay. He cut the tree down, and he actually used the tree to cook with, which was a good sign to them to show that God was much more powerful than their spirits, because they believed if you used that wood to cook with, you were going to be cursed. So he wanted to demonstrate to them that God, Jesus, is much more powerful than their spirit that lived in the tree. So he had cut the tree down and used the wood to cook with. This was a year later. We went to celebrate, and we took a cross, and he screwed a cross into the tree. So it permanently now is representative of the power of Jesus and not the power of whatever the spirit was that was supposedly living there. Is that okay?
Anyone else want to add to that?
So I had the privilege of being there last year, right after the tree was cut down. And when the tree was cut down, it fell on some banana trees of a neighbor of Bill's. So Bill felt like he needed to repay the guy for the damaged trees. So while we were there one day, we went and visited this gentleman. And the legend was there would be a snake, gigantic snake, that would bite you, come out and get you if you took any of the wood and used it to cook with. So when we went to visit this gentleman, and Bill was explaining, hey, I'm repaying you for the damaged banana trees, the gentleman was grateful for that, and Bill reiterated, he had already shared the gospel with the guy, but went back over it again. And as we were leaving, the guy says, oh, wait a minute. So we turned back around, and he said, nothing ever happened to anybody. Like, you were fine, and no one got hurt, and no one's been sick. And he said, no. And he said it's the power of God. There's one true God, and that was a false God, and our God protected us. And the guy was baffled. He wasn't ready to give his life to the Lord, but it was interesting because he was completely baffled by how this tree was cut down, but everybody was fine. So it was just a great testimony to the people in the village that, there is one true God. And so we went back this year. It was such a privilege for me to be back a year later and to be there for the celebration where they put this cross up on this tree to celebrate the fact that there's one true God, and they wanted to proclaim that.
The when we finished that, I kind of hung back because I wanted to take a few pictures without any people in it. So that's a couple of pictures you saw. But I talked with the landowner that is actually on the corner of his property. His name is Natarinda, and the neighbor that lost the banana trees, that's James. They both thought it was on each other's land. So when Bill's like, who really owns this piece of land? They had to go find the ancient markers to determine when Natarinda's like, well, I guess it's on my land. And Bill's like, well, you're one of my deacons. Can we cut it down? It's like crying out loud, right? And so they did. But anyways, I was talking with Natarinda after everyone left. It was just me and a couple other people. And you saw kids climbing all over this thing. And the tree is huge. I mean, it is monstrously huge. And I said, Natarinda, even just a few weeks ago, would children have come up here and played like they did today? And he said, never, never. They would have not come to this corner, this area, period, for fear of their lives. And so another piece. And Bill and Danielle, the first 6 days that we were there, we were using up the last of the wood to cook all our meals. Yes. You want to talk about that, Sue?
There's Church of Uganda, right? Church of Uganda. Yeah.
The question is there any other religions represented within that area?
Well, there's witchcraft. It's powerful. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, so yes, there's the Church of Uganda, which is a state-sponsored church. It's very, very, very traditional. And then there's also a very, very tiny little, what they call born-again church, and they don't use that term in a positive way. They see that as the charismatic church. And then there's Calvary Chapel, Ashunga. Yes?
You got to talk to the pastor of the Church of Uganda, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so that was during the soccer outreach. Bill and I were sharing with some kids, and Bill was just finishing up talking with this one particular kid, and the pastor of the church right there at the football pitch or the soccer pitch came walking up, and he had this quizzical look because we were using the wordless bracelets. By the way, thank you, Sean. You did the bookmarks, which were awesome too. But we used these wordless bracelets, so it has the different colored beads to share the gospel. So he was looking kind of quizzically. So I stepped in and I said, hey, my name's Kevin. I knew he was the pastor, and I introduced myself. And he said, so what are you doing? And so I say, we're just sharing the gospel with kids. And so I used the bracelet. I shared the gospel with him right there, just walked him through it. And then I said, hey, these are a great tool to help with kids in your own church. And so I said, give him 3 of them. And he's like, wow, thank you. This is really neat. So that was a positive interaction because there is some division there. Yeah. Carlos. Most impactful moment of the trip. I'm going to start down at that end. Sonny?
Planted that one, didn't you, Carlos? Yeah. Well, there was 3 or 4 of them for me.
Hold it up close.
I don't want to hold it up close. There was about 3 or 4 for me when I wanted to go over there and work with the kids, which I got to do. Projects was the other half of mine. But I think the biggest piece over there, Pastor Michael had done a sermon on a Sunday, and I missed that because I was teaching the kids down at the school for about an hour. So I asked him to leave his sermon so I could read it. And one of the missionaries, Ryan, he does a Wednesday night at another local church, which is about 10, 12 miles away. And I said, well, I might have something. So I read Pastor Michael's sermon, and then I agreed to do that. And the first Wednesday night, I did half of his sermon. And after the sermon, the men get up and they kind of each pray and ask for somebody to pray for them and talking about it. And the wondrous thing is that there were 6 men, and almost every one of the men referenced back to the sermon that Pastor Michael had written, and said that there was an impact in that sermon on their lives. So we had one that was, he had just reformed from being an alcoholic. He was 3 months as a Christian, another one 1.5 years, and just about all of them, again, the next Wednesday I finished up his sermon, and again, they referenced back to it and said, okay, there was parts of that touched my life. This is what I'm doing. This is what, so that was pretty good for me.
Like Sonny said, there's so many different things that went on, daily, that were highlights, really. But one thing that really stood out to me is that Bill and Danielle have a sponsorship program for the kids that go to school at the school that they have there in Uganda. All the parents pay to have their kids go to school, and they get a uniform, they get their books, and they get a couple meals a day. And they'll take the kids in without, if the parents can't pay, but to help offset that, if parents are just destitute and they don't have any money, they do a sponsorship program where you can pay. We can send money over. $30 a month will allow be enough for a kid to be able to go to school there. So last year when I was there, my wife was with me, and we went to this one family, and they had 2 kids, 2 brothers that were in school, but they were destitute. And so we left the trip and got back a hold of Bill and Danielle, and we told them that we wanted to sponsor these kids. So now that I was going to go back with Kevin and the group, I wanted to visit this family. And so my wife put together these little packets they have 10 people in their family, put together these little packets that we could give to the family members. And we went over there, Danielle and I went over there one afternoon, and they live in a mud hut that's probably 10 by 10, maybe. All 10 of them live in there. And they sleep on the dirt floor, and they have a few rags to cover up with at night for clothing. They're refugees from Rwanda, and they had relocated there after the genocide because they lost all their family. So we went there, and we handed out these packets of there wasn't much, change of clothes, a few trinkets, some candy, that sort of thing. You would have thought that they just won the lottery. They were so thrilled and so happy and so excited to get this, and it just was amazing to me to think they had so much joy. And I thought, I have so much stuff at home compared to them, and how much joy do I have in comparison to them? It was just very humbling, and it was very moving to be there and to be a part of that. I took some pictures, and so I came back and I was sharing that with the team, and I showed Kevin a picture of the family, and he goes, it was a Monday after the men's conference, and Kevin says, that guy came up after the conference and wanted to receive Christ. I was like, whoa, this couldn't get any better. So it was just, that was probably the thing that stood out to me as the most impactful part of the trip.
You want me to go first? All right. I have to give a little bit of background. I wasn't sure I even wanted to go to Uganda. I knew Sue wanted to go, and so I was kind of leaning on going for her sake. But the Saturday before we had to give Kevin the word that we were going to go, I was leaning on not going. And we were driving to Washington with our daughter. And she pulled $100 out of her purse and gave it to us and said, you guys need to go to Uganda. So now how do I say no? But I still hesitated till the next day, and Kevin called me between services and said, so are you in? I said, yeah, we're going. I wasn't sure what we were going to do. It's kind of hard to share this. We've only been at the a year. In fact, it was about a year ago we were sitting there listening to the Kenya team, had just gotten back. I can't believe how much we have done in a year. We've been to Israel. I've joined Doug's discipleship group. And now we've been to Uganda. Anyway, I wasn't really sure. I didn't feel like there was anything I really had to offer in going, but I thought, well, we'll just go. And Kevin did do an excellent job at preparing us, which was already mentioned. There go my notes. But ahead of time, for some reason, 3 passages from Matthew came to me. Matthew 28, the Great Commission, where Jesus said, all authority has been given to me in heaven and earth, so go make disciples, and lo, I'm with you always. And then the rich young ruler in Matthew 19 came to me, and it was like Jesus said, it's easier for the camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich person to get saved. And the disciples said, well, who can get saved then? And that's kind of like where I live. Like, who can get saved in this day and age? I'm like a skeptic. And then the third passage was Matthew 16, where Peter said, he asked him, who do people say that I am, and who do you say that I am? And Peter said, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And he said, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you, but my Father in heaven. And upon this rock I'll build my church. And the whole thing is, Jesus said, I will build my church. And so I was just meditating on these things up into the time of going. And I was thinking God was giving me maybe a message, which really wasn't necessary because we already had great people teaching. And I shared this with them there. It finally dawned on me when we were there, God wasn't giving me a message. God was giving me a message. It's like, you need to understand what I'm saying. All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. He says, with man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And Jesus said, I'm building my church. And these things kept going over, and for some reason, I wasn't really sure where things were going to go in Uganda, but I was happy just to do whatever God wanted. And I can't share all the stories, but the first Sunday, Danielle came and grabbed me in church and said, come on, Mike. And I thought, man, maybe something happened to Sue, because she was teaching Sunday school down at the school. And I said, okay. And I go out and they're praying for a girl. And she says, we got to pray for this girl. She's being tormented by demons. And I'm thinking, wow, okay. I'm not so sure I'm really thrilled about this. And actually, we prayed for her, and God, I don't usually get words, but God gave me a really clear word for her, and it was forgiveness. And actually, what was happening, she was being tormented in the middle of the night by her mom, and the foothold was she needed to forgive her mom. And so we led her through a prayer of forgiveness for her mom, and then we did some intercession for the mom, and that was powerful. That's how it started. And I kind of didn't know it was going to be going down this road. But then Sue said Danielle wanted us to go pray for someone else, and that was a whole other thing. But Sue really took the lead on, so I won't share that. But the whole thing is God is trying to communicate to me. All authority has been given to me. All things are possible with God. I'm building my church. And then I went back and looked at the passages, and I found something that was a little more disturbing in Matthew 28. Remember, the disciples are going up to the mountain to see Jesus, to meet him in Galilee, and it says that they come up, they worship, but some were doubtful. And God pointed his finger at me and said, you're that doubtful person. And I said, well, I believe in the resurrection. What do you mean? It's like, isn't that what they were doubtful about? Is that really Jesus? Did he really rise? And I thought, I believe in the resurrection. And to make a long story short, I could extenuate what God was going back and forth with me. He said, but in practical purposes, you don't. Because you don't believe I'm really with you. You don't believe I'm alive, that I'm the living Christ, and that I'm building my church. And so when I send you to do something, I am with you. And all authority has been given to me. So what I call you to do, you don't have to be concerned about. And the issue is that as we go to pray for these people, it's anxiety. It's like, God, are you going to show up? Is anything going to happen? Are we just going to go through this religious motion and then walk away and leave these people the way they are? And God's trying to get across to me, I'm with you. I am the living Christ. I'm building my church. Yeah, with you it is impossible, Mike. You can't do a thing. And I got that figured out pretty well. I can't do a thing. So we prayed for about 5 different people for these whole issues. One of them actually was not demonic. It was a whole other thing. And it was wonderful to see what God did with them because of your generosity. I'm sorry I'm going way long. But that guy was just stressed. That guy took out some loans to send his kids to school. And we find out how much the loans, it was $320. And because of all your generosity with giving us money, and we really didn't have to pay for this whole trip, you all paid for that guy's loans. So that whole $320. This guy was under tremendous stress over this thing, and it actually was affecting him physically. And so, but anyway, so then I was starting to get the point across, and then so much so that Saturday, I actually asked Danielle, is there anybody else we can pray for tomorrow? Starting to feel like Jesus is going to be with us. It's not me. And the word God gave me is you don't have to cajole me to show up. I am with you. You just got to believe me. You got to believe I'm with you. But I'm a doubter, and so I'm still struggling through this. But yes, but God showed me He does show up. So there's like two stories, I'm sorry. Sunday morning in church, I think God has a sense of humor also. A lady walked into church, and I just thought to myself, somebody needs to pray for that lady. Something's going on with her, you know. And so after church, they walk up to Sue and ask Sue to pray for her. But we decided to sponsor family too. You can't go there and not sponsor a family, right? Especially since it's so reasonable. So our family was all dressed up in clothes that people donated, and Sue wanted to get a picture of them. And I said, well, go get your phone, take the picture, and I'll start praying for the lady. It didn't even dawn on me. It's like, somebody needs to pray for that lady. So God arranged it for me to pray for her. And I forgot that I needed an interpreter. Her friend could kind of speak English. And she just said, I said, what's wrong? And she said something about her head, and I thought maybe she had a headache. So I just started praying for her, and a couple of minutes into praying for her, she was just like weeping, like bawling. I mean, not just little tears. I was holding her hands, and my hands were being washed in her tears. And it was powerful, and it was like, I wasn't really even doing anything. I'm praying in English. She doesn't even know what I'm praying. And time I'm done, Rob's wife came up to me and said, do you need an interpreter? And I said, well, I think we're done here. I said, but you can ask her what happened. And she said, well, the thing's gone. I said, what thing? She had this thing harassing her, bugging her, and it's gone. And she's happy. But see, the weird thing is, right after that, her friend asked me to pray for her, and I'm right back where I was. It's like, I'm done. That's all the faith I had. It's like, I can't pray for this one too. But as I started praying for her, her faith gave me faith, because she actually believed God was going to show up and touch her. So I got to pray for her. But then we got to go visit Michael's family again, and on the way back from visiting his family, Danielle gets a call. And it's this other lady we had heard about who's been getting harassed. And Danielle and Bill had prayed for her once. And so we get a call and said they want us to come over and pray for her. So we went to the place to pray, and she was laying on the ground, and she was like, I don't remember. You guys can correct me if I don't get it all right, because I don't remember this whole first part. She wouldn't look at us. She was kind of fidgeting, and we prayed, and God did reveal some things that I don't really want to share about her. So we kind of broke some things over her, and it was all that was kind of went. And then she was sitting up, and she was looking at us, and she was okay. And then she motioned she couldn't speak. And so Sue looked at me like, okay, do something. Actually, her and Danielle got a word that was a mute spirit, and then she kind of looked at me.
We looked at each other.
They got a word. So I just thought, all right, give me a minute, and I stepped back, and I looked, and I could see it. It was very clear to me. It's like, yeah, she has a demonic spirit clamping tight her chin. So I got down to pray for her. I was going to lay my hands on her, and I know you guys must have thought I was crazy, because this was not verbal. But as soon as I got in her face, a voice said to me, I'm not leaving. And she didn't say it. She can't speak. But I don't know how spirits communicate, and I know it sounds weird, but it was very plain to me. I'm not leaving. And this Holy Spirit just rose up within me and said, oh, yes, you are. By the authority of Jesus, you're going to leave. You're going to let her mouth go, and you're going to leave. And then we started praying over a little bit, and slowly her tongue started moving. And then she was able to open her mouth. And it was like, I got it. I got it. Took me a long time. I'm not going to do it. But by the authority of Jesus, there's no spirit, there is no power, there is nothing in this universe that can stand up to Jesus. And that was powerful. We prayed for her for a little bit more, and there were some things that came out. And then her sister-in-law, who had been behind this curtain crying, came out and went into this like warfare kind of prayer. And it was weird, because I'm used to hearing them speak in different languages, right? They talk a different language. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, she's speaking in tongues. She's not even talking in her own language. She's praying in tongues, and she's doing warfare for her sister-in-law. And it was powerful. And I think I rambled on long enough.
Well, there were so many highlights to the trip. Of course, the privilege of being able to pray for people in bondage and to see God touch their lives. There's a lot of sexual abuse and abuse of children in that area, and it's really heartbreaking. But we were able to pray for some, and the Lord really touched their spirits, really just came and just touched them in such a gentle, loving way, a healing way. And I was really grateful for that. At the soccer tournaments, that was just so much fun. You know, they had music playing, and at first, the first day when I got there, you know, everyone's kind of standing away, kind of looking at you. And I'm thinking, how's this going to work? And so the music started, so I just kind of, you know, started dancing with them a little bit. And so slowly, you know, I'd hold my hand out, and there would be a daring child who would want to, and so they would come in. And so before you know it, there's a big circle, and we're holding hands, and we're dancing. And then usually one person in the group kind of gets a motion going, and so we looked choreographed. I mean, we were looking really good. I was having a great time. And so when the tournament started, I was walking farther away from the microphone, and of course they were following me because they were having fun dancing, and then I got to share the gospel with them through these bracelets. And it was so interesting because you know, if during the game, if they even got the ball to one side of the field, you thought they won the game. Everybody just you know, stands up and yells. And I noticed, like, if we were at the time of, I had an interpreter, by the way, and so they would be repeating the prayer, and I opened my eyes because I noticed when there was a big commotion, the kids that wanted to see what was going on. But then I looked around. All these kids were just crying out for Jesus to come into their lives. Alcoholism is so major there. And, you know, I grew up with an alcoholic parent, so I really could identify with these kids, the fear that they lived with. And I could talk to them about that I understood their fear, and ask them, are you afraid? And they were, you know, yes. And talked a little bit about my dad, because my dad came to know Christ. And then to explain to them that, yes, my dad is a sinner, and he did bad things, but I'm a sinner too, and you're a sinner too. And so I could talk to them about the bad things I did when I was little, and that Jesus forgives us all. He forgave my dad, he forgives me, he forgives you for the bad things that you do. And what was really good too is that I really think they understood that they can cry out for help when they're in a dangerous situation. And it seemed like with all the kids that I prayed with, really stressed, you can call out, just say, Jesus, help me. Just help me, Jesus. That's all you have to say, and he'll never leave you. He'll be right there with you, and that he'll give you a way of escape. And so that was such a joy. And then just being with them. And, you know, I don't know if it was you, Kevin, or Danielle told us, you know, that they want to come, anyone who's been, they want to touch, you know, the and the hair texture and just everything. And I was sitting there one day, I don't know if it was Friday or Saturday, and there were a lot of kids, and all of a sudden I just would feel just such a, I mean, we're talking a gentle, just all over here and here, you know, and they would come, but I don't know if you're going to get this, but it was a real wow moment for me, because it was the hand of Christ. Just like this. It was Jesus. It was Jesus touching me. And so I received infinitely more than I could have ever given. Ever. The love of God through these children, through the people. A grateful people, you know, with a deep, deep trust in the strength and the heart of Jesus. That is their hope. That is their security. No material wealth, overwhelming need, and a joy that goes deep in Jesus. And that is how I want to live my life. I want to live in that joy, day in and day out. He's the lover of our souls. So.
And Sue won't tell you because she's too humble, but she prayed with about 50 kids to receive Christ, and we don't know how many are legitimate. Only God knows for sure. I'll share my experience. Bill said, you know, if you just start talking to them, a group will get around you. So I went up to a group of guys and started talking, and one guy stepped up and everyone stepped back. That was my experience of sharing Christ.
Yeah, by about an hour and a half, 2 hours into the first, because we did the soccer outreach on Friday, which was the girls' tournament, and these are kids, I think max age about 14. So the girls' tournament on Friday and the guys' tournament on Saturday. I'm about 2 hours into the girls' tournament. If you wanted to know where Sue was at, you just looked for the largest group of kids that were in a huddle around someone completely, and Sue would be in the middle. And I think there was at least one of the pictures you could see, you know, where Mickey and them are standing on the outside, and there's, you can see the top of her head, you know. And I remember we were only, like I said, about 2 hours into the outreach, and Sue came up to me and she's like, "I'm out of bracelets. I don't have any more." She had used up all the ones she had, so I reach in my pocket, give her most of the ones that I had left, and she rocked the whole day. That was a unique ministry for Sue, that the Lord really used her powerfully, more than I would say the rest of us. That the Lord just blessed her in that area, and we got to see it. It was great. Just one aspect of it. For me, this was a very different trip. Normally, we're doing a lot of work projects, a lot of physical labor, and I'm keeping things organized, keeping things moving. I'm working side by side with everyone, and there's not a lot of opportunity for me to do any pastoral care with our missionaries that are on the ground. And so as we were loading the van in Entebbe, when we arrived in Entebbe, I pulled something in my abdomen, and it was pretty painful. And that then continued. The first day of work that we did, really, where we started doing digging and carrying bricks and all that. Because remember, I said, "Joseph, what do you want us to do? Do this." And we would do that. I just couldn't do it. It was hurting way too much. And so that put me out of really the ability to just work hard physically every day. But that opened the door for me to meet with each one of the missionaries one-on-one, and to talk about marriage, to talk about ministry and life and parenting and all these things. Something I've always wanted to do but have never been able to do. And, you know, at first when I hurt myself, I was like, this is not what I had planned. Kind of like Mike, you know, like, this is not where I wanted to go. But it really turned out to be a really rich time. And it also meant, some of you may have heard that there was a kidnapping at Queen Elizabeth National Park, which is the safari park that we go to. And this is a huge, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of square miles. But because of that kidnapping, the military and the police closed off all the entrances and exits to the park and all the border crossings, which meant we couldn't go on safari. But that meant also that I got to spend time that day visiting with Michael and each of my teammates, just connecting in ways that I've never got to do before. And so that, for me, that was a piece of the highlight. And then watching and being able to watch and see what God was doing in the teammates like I've never seen before. It was the book of Acts come alive. And again, we're only sharing just little bits of this. But it was, if you don't believe or you don't think that real demonic activity still happens today, come with me on a mission trip. See it happen. See it happen and see God show up. Other questions?
Let me just,
Yes.
for another question, I just want to follow up on a comment that Sue made. She was talking about baptisms. Last Sunday, we had 18 baptisms. Of those 18, 8 were adults and 10 of those were children. So maybe some of those got baptized because of what you did. Another thing Sue mentioned is The school, UKP, is biblical based. They're teaching the Bible. And the other that the kids really need that they don't get at home is love from their parents, and they don't get discipline. So those are the two things. Started it. The school really teaches a love for the children. They're giving out hugs. They're telling them they're loved, they're wanted, they're needed. And then on top of that, the other half of that is the discipline part, because they don't get discipline at home. Basically, when a child goes home from the school, that child goes back to work. They have to carry water, they have to make meals, they have to hoe in the ground. So love and discipline are the two biggest things that are taught at the school and all the teachers in there. And then the third thing, in the last week, I was talking to Danielle, is that there is so much need over there. I think Michael was talking about that. Thousands of things that they're needed over there because their life is just so simple. But Danielle said, don't let need be the lead. There's so much that needs to be done, and you can't let that take over UKP.
Love you, Sonny. Yeah, one of the cool things is the sponsor family that he's talking about. The man that gave his life to Christ that first weekend, John Patrick is his name, fled Rwanda, Muslim. And he was getting all this grief from his family. This is what he was explaining to me right before I prayed with him when I said, well, John Patrick, do you know Jesus? I mean, have you surrendered your life to Jesus? And but the lead up to that was, I'm getting all this pressure and problems from my extended family because I've started attending this church. Because when I come here, I feel joy. And then, that led up to me, have you surrendered your life? And he said, no, but I want to. And so we prayed, prayed to receive Christ. And John Patrick was one of those that got baptized that Sunday, because Bill was talking about how they were going to do a baptism in a couple of weeks. So he had given his life to Christ. The service was over, and he grabbed me, and he says, how do I sign up to be baptized? And because he was thinking that was going to be that day. And it was just the joy. And then the next Sunday, to sit next to him in church, it was an out-of-body experience. And I mean this in the best possible way. To hear him with his wife next to him, worshiping passionately, unashamedly, as Pastor Michael is teaching, he is amening every other word. I mean, he's got a Bible, his own Bible, right? And he is reading it in his own language, and he is just soaking it up. And it was just infectious to be able to sit next to him. It was completely humbling in that sense. Yeah.
Kevin, I wanted to, with this family, again, because you all supported us to get there, we had a little extra money that really is your money. And so they were, as Michael said, they were sleeping on the floor. So we were able to get 3 mattresses, pretty good thickness, to cover their entire floor, and blankets. So that's all from you. So they are no longer sleeping on the floor. Yeah.
Other questions? Yes, Colton.
For each of you, what was the most difficult aspect of the culture to understand or cope with or just grasp?
Most difficult thing to grasp or handle or deal with in the culture, or just in general.
Having to take orders from this little pup over here that's only
I was the youngest person on the team.
So I think the Lord stepped in, and I don't think he hurt himself. I think the Lord did it so he could find other things to do. But let me tell you a couple more things about Kevin. He was a good team leader, but you ought to see him killing chickens. Yes. The Ugandans over there, they pluck their chicken before they kill it, but Kevin had to get a couple of the kids to help him with the chicken because he couldn't catch the chicken. So the Ugandans had to catch it, and then he beheaded it. Another thing, and I don't know that he did this on purpose, but one day he happened to lock one of the young children from the mission in his room.
You had to bring that up.
Yes, I did. 5 hours. Yes.
Poor Nixon. Poor Nixon. Nixon has a seizure disorder.
Then the next day he did it again, but he did it to a team member this time. Yes. So, but luckily my window was open. I could get somebody to rescue me on that piece. On something about Kevin, Pastor Michael here. We were at the football tournament, and we were putting up the nets on the end of the field up there, and you have to zip tie these to the poles in there. So we selected Michael. He's the lightweight to climb up the ladder and do the zip ties on that. Well, after about an hour, not one zip tie had been done on there. So we had to pull Michael off and send him to remedial school to learn how to do zip ties. And then we got the biggest guy over there, Big Mike, to go up the ladder and finish the zip ties. And I almost brought one tonight to see if he could really do a zip tie in that.
They didn't have any instructions.
I know. And then Mike over there, Sue was talking about dancing with the kids. And I wish we'd have put some videos in there of
Oh, we got him.
Oh, you got 'em?
Oh, we got him.
You know white men can't dance? Well, Michael just proved that that's a true story, but he was out there moving around with the kids out there, and I tell you,
That's right.
Mike's a pretty soft guy for as big as he is, because I think from day one to the last day in that, there wasn't a day go by that he didn't have a kid in his arms. Yeah. So that was pretty good. And then Sue over there, I think she must have cried every day. Yeah. So I think that Sue and Mike had the biggest gift from the Lord in going over there.
Hesitant to answer your question, but I will share this because I'm not trying to fit into our present media's portrayal of men. But it is interesting over there. Men do have some freedom that the women don't have. They can marry as many women as they want to. They don't have to take care of the kids that they leave. And so a lot of the people we prayed for, and I don't know if you're streaming this or not, but I just want to personally thank Bill and Daniel for letting us come over. Those people are tremendous in what they're doing. It's Jesus building his church, but their faith, he's using them to do it. And thank you, Bill and Danielle, because I didn't thank you enough when I was there. But a lot of the people we prayed for were women and kids who were on their own and who had been abused. And that was not stuff that was given to us, information by Danielle or anyone else. It was words that God gave us specifically, and as we addressed those things, definitely power came and there was release and shame was forgiven. And the wonderful thing is these guys did a men's conference and 4 of them spoke, and it was right on the money for what needed to be said to those men. And the other great thing is they have these 7 guys in the School of Ministry that I really believe, I don't know how they picked them, but I think they were chosen by God, and I think God is going to use them powerfully to reach those men in Uganda. They definitely have a need for the men to surrender their lives to Christ and get in line with how Christ would have them to live. I got into a little discussion with somebody over why we don't marry more women in America. Well, one, it's illegal. Our wives don't like it, and the Bible says we shouldn't do it. So, and on the third point, he walked away. So I don't know.
cultural stuff difficult?
I think it's just trying to communicate with people. Probably it was just it was hard. You want to communicate. You want to be able to talk to them. We didn't always have translators with us. When we went to visit the family or the kids we support, Danielle did her best to translate. She's picked up on some language there, but you just can't communicate, your heart to them like you want to, and they can't to you. And I think that was probably the biggest thing for me being there, was just not being able to really have a heartfelt conversation. So we did our best, but it's difficult through even with translator.
Can I talk about UKP just for a second? I spent a lot of time with Danielle over there talking about UKP, and Bill and Danielle have been there for 8 years. The school's been there for about 4, and the first class that Bill and Danielle taught had 15 students in it. Today, right now, they have a baby class through P6, and that's 245 students. Now, they have another 500 or so students that are up around Kampala that they support also, and they're thinking about bringing them back down to the Uganda Valley. And their vision right now is to put in P7, which is a junior high class, but that's the last grade that you go to before high school, and you have to pass the country's standard test to be either go on to education or go into a vocational school. And so by January, they're hoping to put that P6 class into place, and then also build a dormitory for the P7 class. And so that's right now in God's hands to see if that can be done. They have some property that they purchased years ago. They're hoping to sell that and pay for that dormitory. And then their next vision is for a high school to be built over there. And again, that would be dormitory style for those people. And they would take one of the banana groves out and build that high school in. So, and then they want to become, if I believe correctly, nationally certified, so they can teach a different curriculum over there. So they have a big vision. Everything that's happened so far has been Christ-based, Christ-supported, and so we'll see what happens. But they have a big vision, and as they said, Bill and Danielle have done an amazing job over there, just amazing.
It is overwhelming that to see what's taken place in that area in 6 years in Ashunga, just 6 years in Ashunga, to go from living in 2 tents with a little tin shack between the 2 tents as their kitchen to all of this, and to know that it was a walk of faith. And that's what God wants each of us to do, is walk by faith. Amen? And that's what I think everyone that goes on a mission trip comes away with, what Mike was talking about. It's God's work in his way with willing hearts that say, I do believe, and right now I'm struggling with how that's going to look and if you're going to show up, but I'll make the first step of faith to go and do something rather than nothing. And he wants us to do that in our homes, in our communities, in our workplaces, in our church. He wants us to have that attitude of, if I'll just walk towards him and meet him, I will find him. And we'll find him that he was always there, just waiting for the opportunity to pour out the power of his Spirit and his provision in the way that he wants to do it. And so I hope this has given you a little taste of what it looks like. This isn't unique, I can say this. I mean, this has been a great team, one of the oldest teams I've been on. Because remember, I was the kid. But to have each of the teams that I've been a part of over the years, to see God radically transform someone's life and to do things that they thought were not possible or probable or likely. And right down to, how is this going to happen? How are we going to pay for this trip? And so I challenge you to think about what you might do. For those that you're not aware, there is a mission trip for the high school students. Josh, when is that? July 6th through the 14th, and you're going to Burns, Oregon. They're going to be working with small churches. So think about supporting that work. In October, we're going to be sending a team to the Congo, which is a wild and woolly place. And think about maybe going. Right now, I can take 3 more people, 2 guys and a gal. And I challenge you to think about what God might do with you. Amen? One last question, and then we're going to close it up. Yeah.
I don't know if I can communicate this, but it's easier over there. It's easier because you're not surrounded with a bunch of stuff, and you don't have property to take care of, and you go there and your sole purpose is God. What is it you want me to do today? I want to follow you. Can that be done? Yes. Here, of course. But I am telling you, it is easier because you are unencumbered by the things of this world. You really are setting your mind on the things above, not the things that are on earth. And I know for me personally, I want to become more unencumbered here. I want to get rid of, so my life can be simplified, and that I can be free to, with my time, money, my energy, however that looks in my life, I want to be unencumbered so I can be free to follow Christ here with my whole heart, my whole soul, all my mind, and all of my strength. And, of course, love my neighbor as myself. So
I'm going to close in prayer. Josh, you want to come up and lead us in a final song? God, I want to thank you that you did exactly what you've always said you would do, which is when your children would come to you and cry out to you, seek you, that they would find you, Lord, that we would find you. That like the perfect good father, you always give not just good gifts, but the very best gifts. And you shower them lavishly on those that are surrendered to you in humility. And God, thank you that you broke each one of us in a new way. You spoke into an area of our lives that, Lord, we perhaps hadn't heard for a long time. Thank you that you are still in the business. It is your purpose and desire to change people. That we got to see that, we got to experience it, and we got to be recipients of that change as well. And so I pray, God, that you continue to inspire us here, not just those up on the stage, but everyone that's here tonight and those that would watch this live stream or recorded later, that we would be encouraged, God, by you to take a step of faith wherever you've placed us, wherever you're going to call us, and that we would see your power unleashed in a broken heart. And it would be for your glory and to your praise. And so we ask you in your name, Jesus. Amen.